Which country feels so dystopian? I play Geotastic with friends. Sometimes you land someplace in Google Maps and try to guess the country. Once we landed in some part of Kampala, Uganda, and I was honestly in shock. The sheer amount of traffic and the same bombardment with ads and flyers you would expect from Tokyo, garbage and dirt everywhere. I know this sounds kinda awful to say, I'm sure Kampala has nice places too. But this scenery was just one of the most dystopian real-world footage I've ever seen. The US feels like this when you experience what it's like for the most and least privileged demographics. Just an obscene spectrum of people with way too much versus people that are really struggling. It also feels like a bureaucratic dystopian every time you go to the doctors or need to get something approved by insurance. Just to see if people that are paid specifically to find ways to deny you coverage after you've spent years paying for it. Sao Paulo, Brazil. The discrepancy between rich and poor areas is some cyberpunk 2077 level shit. When I was a teenager and young adult, I worked for my grandfather, who was a musician acoustic guitar maker. We traveled to many countries back then. It was the 1980s and 90s. Brazil had great memories for me at the time. But when I returned with my family decades later, I was sad at how things progressed. Definitely disagree. Growing up I have heard more foreigners say that the USA is the best country on earth than actual USA citizens. Many USA citizens know that corruption exists and do protest about it all the time. Furthermore, I never heard anyone claim that they feel like they are living in a utopian society. Sure, we have a good structured society, but it's far from perfect. Nearly every country, when you understand how complicit they are with mass atrocity committed by their governments every day. Through the lens of awareness, every landscape can feel dystopian. We are in a dystopia, being fed visions of utopia to distract us. The police state grows and laws are passed behind closed doors to ensure our rights won't be ours soon enough. We'll see a lot of USA here, but that is rooted in a lack of outside perspective. We have our problems, most of which go unaddressed, but at the end of the day most people are still able to live their lives in a relatively privileged position. It's hard to really answer this question without a firm definition of dystopia, however. My home country, for me, too. In most other countries of the world, a decent living standard is guaranteed. Oh yeah, I know I'm probably wrong here, but India just cannot provide so many people decent living. Living abroad and going back there feels like time traveling. For real. Not in a good way, cause I've gone at least 30 years back. China. The fact that there's something like one surveillance camera, with a strong face detect, for every 4 citizens is a dead giveaway. With the vast majority in urban centers. Yes, North Korea is, currently, a worse hellhole, but I usually personally look at dystopia as seemingly prosperous nations with a horrible underside, the US. Sorry, but to have so much wealth with such deep and truly bizarre problems shows that resources must be horribly distributed and social institutions must be corrupt. No sane society would willingly tolerate the school shootings, or such massive wealth inequality with meager social investment. Japan. A country where people sleeps in public places to show off how busy they are, where instead of having a pet you have a pillow with a moving tail, and an apartment smaller than your standing up area, is nothing but a dystopia. Also they go to karaoke and sing in solitude. In previous times, Nazi Germany and Khmer Rouge Cambodia. Basically red Asian orange hot burgundy. Currently, North Korea and to some extent, China, where they seem to be building the social surveillance apparatus Kim Jong-un comes buckets over. The USA. And I'm an American citizen. Racism is prolific. The poor are rampant and continually growing. Fake images are abound. Political isolation. X200B. Show me a better example of dystopian society than America. South Korea. Rich country, hypercapitalism, highest luxury goods spending, lowest birth rate, highest suicide rate, highest loneliness rate, etc., etc., etc. The list can go on. This place is literally one generation from Night City. I am not gonna name my country, because hordes of IT cell folks have raided me in the past and sent me death and rape essay threats. A hint, emphasis on the words, IT cell and SA. Really puts in the dystopia and dystopia. Surprised no one mentioned UAE yet, country built and run by slave labor and abuse. Employers confiscating passports, delaying wages, court that favors the locals no matter what. Transnistria. All the intimidating symbolism and authoritarianism of an Eastern Bloc country, but with a shady private company controlling politics and most consumer goods. To quote Charlie Chaplin's Great Dictator speech, "And so long as men die, liberty will never perish." Looks like they're trying really hard to finish off liberty for good. I'm generally pretty pro-America, but holy shit, North Philadelphia is one of, if not the most miserable looking place I've ever been, third world countries included. I like all these people listing places they've never been. Editus. I think the closest answer is that it depends on who and where you are. Perceptions of dystopia vary, but some individuals find North Korea's strict regime and isolationist policies evoke a dystopian atmosphere. Russia. It's basically run by an organized crime syndicate, and it's sending its young people to die so the mob boss can stroke his ego. Absolutely the United States of America. The income gap is atrocious. The two-party system has stopped. Working wages are stagnant. As a resident of it, the UK. Fuck Tories. As an outsider, the USA seems to have many of the same issues that the UK does. England. Quality of life is rapidly eroding away. Extremely bleak outlook for the future and no real hope in sight. India. We only used to have women fighting for rights and now we are going to have to fight for men's as well. North Korea feels like one of those sci-fi dystopian movies novels inspired by the myth of the cave. Any country that has portraits of current or former unelected leaders adorned in public spaces. Risky answer, but where I live in India, probably. Especially if you're female LGBT minority. South Korea. The intense work and school schedule results in little time for anything else. Not a country but Los Angeles, never seen such high contrast between wealth and poverty. I mean, the US has 25 of the world's incarcerated population. That's kinda dystopian. Argentina, a country that has everything but never seems to be getting anywhere. America for spacious condos and amber waves of fentanyl-addicted homeless people. A bunch of kids saying the US without ever having seen outside the US. Not a country. The whole Occident feel like a big dystopian at this point. I feel like everyone answering with the US are just trying to be edgy. Israel. Some colony from the violent and dark side of the universe. Portland, San Francisco if you're talking about the United States. USA, Canada, North Korea, Somalia, Iran, Iraq, Sweden, and Germany. China and Korea for being cyberpunk 2077, also Brazil to a degree. Turkmenistan 100. It almost completely matches the definition. Texas. It's literally in process of regressing to the 1700s. The US is getting more and more dystopian as time goes on. From my experience, most of the Southeast Asian countries, the country where shooting drills take place in schools. Sweden. It is very disciplined and it has a ton of rules.